Hi, everybody. Welcome back once again. This is Mark Lawrence, and we're all set to go against the spread on this ProLine TV podcast just for you this college and pro football weekend. With that, a big weekend on tap, and I'm going to bring in our experts, our panel of experts to the show, namely Mr. Jim Feist from Las Vegas, Mr. Vegas himself, Andy Isco from TheLogicalApproach.com, also in Las Vegas, Greg DePalma, our producer extraordinaire, and myself, yours truly, Mark Lawrence. Greg, they've got us outnumbered. Vegas 2-1 against us. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's I think apropos, isn't it, for the type of show that we're doing?
I sort of think it is.
Well, if you look at it,
should outnumber us.
If you look at it a different way, we've got both coasts covered equally.
We can look at it that way, sure. Right.
We do. We have the southeast coast and we have the west coast.
Yeah,
exactly.
Now we just need the northeast coast.
But let's roll into the show, guys. And before we get into the show, we're going to do the NFL first because Jim has to leave us after the NFL segment. And I want to make sure that we do have time enough for Jim. Everybody is waiting anxiously to see exactly what it is he has to say on the card this week. And before we get to that, I want to ask you, Jim, I'm going to start with you about some of the good, bad, and ugly moments on the card last week in the National Football League. We had a ton of pick sixes, fumble recoveries, return for touchdowns, blocked field goals, return for touchdowns. We even had a quarterback that tried to complete a pass to a fan in the stadium tunnel, for goodness sake. It was a wild and woolly week, to say the least.
I think that quarterback, by the way, tried it twice in succession.
He hit the
third and fourth down. Yeah.
Yes, but he's also going to be watching the game with us from the sidelines this week,
and maybe suiting up for the Vikings or the Bengals in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
possibly.
for what it's worth.
Well, it was a crazy week. I mean, so many of us. I don't know specifically everybody here, but the Rams loss was just absolutely devastating for all of us that had the Rams plus 3.5. And the Rams on the win the game straight up. That was a devastating loss. And Tampa Bay playing with offensive linemen out, had the lead, gave up the lead, and then Baker had to do it again, which he's done now 3 times in a row, come back in the last minute to win the game.
Which, by the way, he did with all those offensive line injuries. So that tells you something about Baker Mayfield and maybe the overall coaching of the Bucs.
Well, if we can keep Baker upright and healthy for the whole season, he's an MVP for the season. I mean, this is what he's doing is amazing. Now we of course we lost Russell Wilson. Now they finally, please God, don't ever let him play again. They're going to bench him. He should have been benched 5 years ago. But now I don't know what we're going to get.
I'll put it this way: let him play for every team that my survivor pick is going against.
And let his wife keep appearing on America's Got Talent. She was on that show last night. She's quite a good-looking woman, to say the least.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's interesting. Okay. Dallas Cowboys have proven once again this is how you don't play defense. They're amazing. Eberflus ruined the Bears, and now he's going to ruin the Dallas Cowboy defense, which he's already done. He made Russell Wilson look really good in the game that they played against them.
He's also responsible for Caleb Williams' 2 best games as a pro, one coaching him, one coaching against him.
You're right. Absolutely. What the hell is wrong with the Baltimore Ravens? Why can't they stop anyone? And why can't Henry hold on to the ball after all these years? I don't know. There's so much to talk about the Colts. Are they for real? I mean, they played the 30th weakest schedule so far, and now they go to the Rams, who are totally pissed off about blowing a 26-7 lead. There's so many stories right now. What's wrong with the Houston Texans? Why can't they score? You have a 38 total on this game, which tells you a lot about that game. Detroit, who I thought was the best team from the NFC last year until they got all those injuries on defense. Boy, this past 2 weeks, they look like they're right there again, even without the the center and the offensive and defensive coordinator, they looked awfully good this week. And Atlanta made Carolina look like a real team. I don't know if that was Carolina doing that or Atlanta doing that. And we've had 5 backup quarterbacks play last week, and now we're going to add a 6th one, not because of injury, but by choice, with Dart starting for the Giants. So we've only gone through 3 weeks, and we're already playing 6 backup quarterbacks.
Unbelievable.
By the way, after this weekend, effectively, we're a quarter of the way through the season already. 4 of 17 games. It goes so quickly.
It's unreal how fast it's all going by, unquestionably. We're going to get into a lot of the games that Jim mentioned here. We're going to, on our discussion, the preview of our football games. Andy, what was your take on what happened last week in the National Football League? Chaos, or was it refreshing?
A little bit of both. I mean, it was chaos describes what happened, but sometimes that's a little bit refreshing. Of course, depending upon which side helped you with the chaos and which you didn't, might taint your view a little bit. But it was a good, fun week. But we've had some really amazing games to start the season. We had that Buffalo Baltimore game in Sunday night in week 1. We had the Dallas Giants shootout in week 2, and we had the Monday night game between Baltimore and Detroit in week 3. So we've had some three games, all of which could be considered games of the year as far as entertainment value goes already. And one thing I've noticed, we sort of talked to Jim and I yesterday when we did the teaser and the contest and alternate line show, is we're seeing a lot more parity in the league being reflected by these low point spreads. I think about half the games this week, it was either this week or last week, had point spreads. I think it was last week, had point spreads below 4. And you rarely see that many games that are in that low price range. And it just indicates that right now the lines maker is acknowledging that a lot of these games are toss-ups. And, the chaos only tends to emphasize the fact that on any given Sunday, we talked last week about Cleveland and Green Bay. And a lot of us liked Cleveland in the game, plus the points. And I did as well. But I said the way to go through, the way to back Cleveland is to play the under. Because if you play the under, it means Cleveland's defense is going to play pretty well, which it did. And we're seeing a lot more teams, I think, being a little bit more conservative in their play calling. The thing I like about Detroit, and, it's hard to bet against them, Dan Campbell wants to win every single play, and he likes to be aggressive on the vast majority of those plays.
Greg, I know you're a big Detroit Lions fan as well, and I'm coming around slow but sure. I really like what I saw from Jared Goff last week. He looked cool, calm, and collected. He looks like he's a quarterback that can lead his team right into the Super Bowl. What was your thought on what you saw in the NFL last week, Greg?
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because Detroit, I was just taking a look at the futures, and the Lions are still getting a good number. And I think this is where I would really look at. I mean, you're still getting Detroit at 10-1. The Chargers are looking great. They're 11-1. And you could even go down there. The Rams are still 20-1. Mm-hmm. They were a field goal away from being undefeated and beating the defending champs on their home field, and they're 20-1. And the Bucs are undefeated at 22-1. And as we were talking about off the air, we'll talk about the game in a little bit. They are going to get, as of right now, the majority of their injured players back. So it's not like some teams like the Niners. I mean, Bosa, done. I mean, yeah, Ayuk's coming back, but he's coming back on an ACL. How effective is he going to be? So, I think there's still some pretty good value plays as far as the futures are concerned out there that I'm interested in. And the other thing too is, and I find it's funny because we talk about it when we preview the season all over, every year we preview the season, and every year I say the same thing. We really aren't going to know for sure about certain teams until, I don't know, 4, 5, maybe even half a season. That's how long it takes. We all agree. It's the limited practices, all of that. It takes a long time to really figure out what's going on in the NFL. And maybe the midway point is the point. And yet, every single week, we over-exaggerate and we talk about this team being no good. And then the next week, they're good. And that team's no good. And the next week, they're no good. And that's, I just find it funny that we just still continue to sit here and just over-analyze the first couple of weeks of the season.
To your point, Greg, let me ask Jim this question. You mentioned about the odds and the futures of AFC and NFC teams. Could it be that some of these NFC future odds look appealing simply from the standpoint that there are more likely teams to make it to the Super Bowl from the NFC than there are the AFC, more powerful teams in the NFC?
Oh boy. That's probably true. I mean, but as Greg said, it's early. I mean, Bill Belichick said it years ago. Kenny White said it on the show yesterday. The first 3 weeks of the season are really like an extension of the preseason because they don't really practice. And so now we don't know what we're getting. The question came up yesterday, and this is interesting. Who's going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC if you looked at it right now? And I would say it would have to be the Indianapolis Colts. However, they haven't played anybody. So now they're going to play a real team that's off a loss on the West Coast in the Rams.
Jim, why wouldn't you say the Buffalo Bills?
Well, I don't think the Buffalo Bills defense has shown us the quality. Now, granted, they have a soft schedule the rest of the way because they
have very little competition in the AFC East.
Correct.
Whereas we don't know about Indianapolis. They may get some competition. Jacksonville is playing well. Houston, I think, will figure things out. But Buffalo seems to have the easiest road. They've already beaten Baltimore, and they get a chance to beat Kansas City later in the season. And I guess the other team to consider, but their path is a little bit more difficult, would be the Chargers.
Yeah, you got to look at the Chargers and give them
the Chargers play in a rougher division. Yeah. And the Colts play in a weak division, and so do Buffalo. So your point is excellent, Andy. It could be right now. It could be a tie between the Colts and Buffalo, or tie between Buffalo and the Colts, right? Yeah. But I haven't looked at the full schedule that the Colts have, but I mean they have a tough game this week. I mean, the Rams are not going to be an easy knockoff, especially after blowing a 26-7 lead last week, where they had Philly lost. I mean, they had them beaten. So it's too early to really speculate, but you can't say the Indianapolis Colts don't have a chance.
No, and one reason why you can't dismiss the Colts is because when you talk about the games that they play, it's only 2 of them, but they play what I think a second place schedule in the AFC South, meaning they play the second place teams in 2 of the other divisions, whereas the Bills play the first place teams in the 2 other divisions. So that's a little bit of an edge that offsets maybe Buffalo's edge right now by playing overall in a weaker division, because Indianapolis, because of how they do the scheduling for 1, 2, 3, 4, has 2 easier opponents than Buffalo does because of where they finished in their respective divisions last year.
Guys, what do you say? Let's get into what I think most of our listeners and viewers are out there jonesing for, and that's us breaking down the football games on tap this weekend. We're going to do just that. And I want to also remind our listeners and viewers out there, you do us a big favor. If you hit the subscribe button down below, hit the like button while you're there and ring the bell, we would greatly appreciate it. And we'll notify you whenever any live or programmed podcasts are available here on the ProLine Network and from yours truly here at Mark Lawrence Against the Spread. With that, now let's start things off. I'm going to start things off first here with one of my just saying observations. I usually kind of tend to close the show out, but I want to open it up because this is about the NFL. And we've got the privilege of having Jim Feist available to us right now at the moment. And according to our Midweek Alert statistical newsletter, if you take a look through the first 3 games of the season here, there are 7 NFL teams that have been winless in the stats this season. They have not out-yarded an opponent yet this year. 4 of them have winning records, which I find to be a little bit shaky. Those 4 teams that have winning records that have yet to outstat an opponent are the Arizona Cardinals, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Philadelphia Eagles winless in the stats, yet undefeated. You know what they're doing, guys, in my mind? They're putting a run on like we've seen from Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs closely in years past, where they would win all these close one-score games, get out-yarded in the football contest, but yet still find ways to win games. And that appears to me to be the personality that Philadelphia is developing to start the football season.
Well, I agree with you. The four teams again were Cincinnati,
Arizona, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh.
Well, I think three of those teams are actually not good. I think Philadelphia is excellent. And I'm going to tell you, I feel that Philadelphia is playing, everybody else is playing checkers, and Philadelphia is playing chess. They are just kind of like biding their time. And when need to be, plus, first of all, they have that stupid tush push thing that it's a rugby play. It's not a football play. I don't think it should be allowed. But
it'll be gone next year.
And yeah, especially after what happened in this past game, when they specifically asked the referees, because the coaching staff, the opposing coaching staff said they're jumping off sides, so make sure you take a look at it. And then they jumped off sides again, and they didn't call it. And they keep doing that and getting away with it. Like you said, Andy, that's going to be the last.
The way they're going to do it, and I thought about this, is they are going to change the rules that will say something to the effect of there must be at least, say, 12 to 16 inches of free space shoulder to shoulder between the offensive linemen so that the referees can actually see where the football is being snapped, as opposed to having everybody all bunched together and you can't see the football. I think that's the way that they're going to modify the rule so that the officials have an ability to see what's happening around the ball and what's happening between the linemen.
Well, let me ask you guys this question. Is there a possibility that the NFL could overturn the rule on the tush push during the course of the season while the season is in progress?
I think they did something like that a few years ago for one of the rules. I don't remember what it was, but they did make a rule change during the season.
Well, don't you think that messes some way somehow with the record books? I mean, the scores that they made with tush pushes, suddenly they're no longer available. I don't know how it softens the record or not, but I think they'd have to think about doing just that because of all the success that Philadelphia has met with the tush push.
They made a big mistake in not outlawing it before. I don't know if they do that throughout the season. I do think Philadelphia, because their offensive and defensive lines are so damn good, and Hurts is not a bad quarterback. He's a very, very qualified, intelligent quarterback with lots of skills, but they don't play that type of game. They play a game. Now, granted, they should have lost last week. I mean, that was ridiculous what happened with that game. But in any case, that's just one game. But overall, they are a solid football team. Very difficult. Now, I'm not saying they're the best team in football. I don't think we've reached that point. But the other three teams you mentioned that in the stats they're doing poorly, I don't believe are very good at all. And I don't think they're going to develop into anything near playoff teams by the end of the season. Philadelphia, unless they have some serious injuries, they have the one wide receiver. And his name escapes me. You can't guard him. He's bigger,
A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown.
Pardon me?
A.J. Brown?
Yes, that's him.
What a horse.
You can't stop that man. If you
and yet for some reason, for the first 2.5 games of the season, they couldn't get the ball to him.
Right.
So that's why I said myself, and Andy might be right, but I think that's why I think this game against Tampa Bay is going to tell us whether or not that was the outlier, was the second half against the Rams, or whether or not that is exactly what does kickstart the rest of their season offensively. But I think we need to see one full game from their offense and their passing game against the Bucs on Sunday to say, okay, yeah, that's exactly what they needed to get their passing game going.
Mark, I want to ask you one thing about the stats that you mentioned about winning and losing in the stats, because this is something that I've always had a question about, because the stats that we talk about, the yardage, okay, does not take into account opportunities lost by teams to have better offensive stats when the defense puts them in position, or the special teams or defense score touchdowns. That's one less possession that the team that benefits from those defensive scores or favorable positions lose. So I would make an argument, at least, that perhaps in the stats might also want to consider a separate way of looking at it, and that's yards per play. In other words, one team may have 73 snaps in a game, and because they can't make first down, so they just keep running, or they do make first downs and they extend drives, versus a team that may have only 52 stats per game because A, they score on big plays, or B, they end up getting defensive contributions. So I tend to look at both of them, but I do place emphasis on yards per play because that basically says when you run a play, how successful are you, regardless of the number of times you get to run the ball. It's almost the same thing as a different type of situation that comes to mind as far as being able to use stats that are apples to apples. I guess. Okay. The one I was thinking of was yards per pass attempt tells me absolutely nothing, because it includes unsuccessful pass attempts. I look at yards per pass completion because that tells you what happens when the play is successful. So I take a look at, like a quarterback might complete 20 passes for 300 yards, and another quarterback might complete 10 passes also for 300 yards. I'd rather rely on the guy who's able to get the big play when the passes are completed, and the pass attempts is more a measure of completion percentage.
Well, you can break these down.
When you're looking at stats, and you're both making excellent points. All of these stats, when you talk about in the stats, like Mark brought up, then at the end of the game, sometimes the stats, because the team is back, the garbage time stats and stuff, and they'll run up a lot of yards, and then let's take an example. New England is not a great football team yet. But they beat the crap out of Pittsburgh last week, but they turned the ball over 5 times. So turnovers, like Jim Barnes used to say back in the day when he wrote his journal, that you can't predict turnovers, but some teams are more prone to them.
Exactly.
Like Henry is now fumbling the ball. Now, he's been around a long time. He's never done that. All of a sudden, he's fumbling the ball in every game. There's so many stats you have to look at in order to come to a conclusion. But running the ball, controlling the clock, and having an offensive line is the most important thing for the offense, in my opinion. They pass block. They give the quarterback time to throw the ball. They run block. They open holes for the runners. That right there, we take that little scenario and you have this run pass option, RPOs. If a quarterback can use that and hold the lineman, that opens up the passing lanes, because now the linemen have to worry about the running. Football is a game of a lot of things working together.
Yeah, a lot of measures, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Right.
When I saw Detroit manhandle Baltimore the other night, and I mean they did manhandle them, their offensive line dominated, their defensive line dominated, their running game dominated, and their quarterback was totally efficient because he had time. He was his receivers accurate. Most quarterbacks are accurate if you give them time. So, and when you put it all together, who's the most impressive? Well, I start with the offensive line. Who has the best or the top 5 offensive lines? When you start there, then you go, who has the best defensive line or the best 7 on defense that can add pressure? I mean, the Giants rank pretty damn good in that department. They just suck in every other department. But I mean, the Giants can put a lot of pressure on you. So it's very complicated to just come up with one stat that's going to make it for you.
Well, you know what it is, Jim? I think if a person, a handicapper, we all get comfortable with certain aspects of the game that we like and we look for each and every time. If you like and you look for, Andy does yards per play. I like rush attempts per game. Whatever it is you happen to look at and you feel comfortable with, just keep doing it. Just keep analyzing it. You can overanalyze like a lot. I'm talking a lot of these analytical handicappers do today. And somebody mentioned about garbage yards at the end of a football game. Well, a lot of those analytical handicappers will want to extract those from the stats. But I ask you this question. How do you know going into a game how many garbage yards the team you're going to bet on is going to have that game? You don't.
Perfect example, Mark. Just to interrupt for a moment. Last week, when the Rams are up 26-7 against the Eagles late third quarter, are those garbage yards for the Eagles down by 3 scores? Or how about the Jets when they're down, 21-3 or something? Are those garbage yards? And both the Jets and the Eagles came back in what might normally be considered garbage yard situations down by 3 scores in the second half. And all of a sudden, they're no longer garbage yards because they were meaningful yards because both the Rams and both the Eagles and the Jets took late leads after being down by 3 scores.
Bottom line, Andy, is they cannot be applied. You don't know
Yeah.
What's going to happen. You know, who's going to be getting garbage yards. You're getting them because you have a large lead in a game.
Or what the parameters are for what qualifies as garbage yards.
Exactly.
Well, you have to look at the coach a little bit here. Because if you have a coach that gets a lead and that sits on the lead, he's prone to giving up a lot of garbage yards, underneath garbage yards. Now, that might be the thing that you look at with John Harbaugh, because they have the ability to get big leads, but they also lead the entire NFL in giving up double-digit leads in the fourth quarter. He's a guy that doesn't put his foot on your neck and put you out of your misery.
Like Dan Campbell.
Dan Campbell is the other end of it.
Yep.
He gets you down 30-7, and he's going to murder you. He's just going to put his foot on your neck, and he's going to put you out.
Sometimes it costs him with his decisions, like in that championship game against San Francisco.
Yes.
But much more often than not, his decisions work.
Yeah, he does like to leave a footprint. No question about that.
Yeah.
Well, let's take these stats I was talking about, guys, and get into these games here about the winless teams and the stats. And the first game we're going to tear down is Minnesota taking on Pittsburgh in Dublin, Ireland, the Steelers being one of these winless teams in the stats thus far this football season. Greg, what do you think happens in Dublin, Ireland when Minnesota takes on Pittsburgh?
There'll be a lot of drunk fans in the stands. That's for sure. Besides that,
and they've already started.
Yeah, absolutely. Besides that, I would say that Minnesota is just a better team. And this is going to be a big opportunity now for Carson Wentz, because the first game he played was one of those situations where he's kind of in preseason mode. The rest of the team is in regular season mode. So he's got to catch up a little bit. Did he play okay? Yes. Did he play fantastic? No, but he didn't need to. So now, and he was the Bengals. Now he gets an extra week, and JJ is going to get ready to play soon. So here's really your shot, because there's 2 games, and I would probably guess that they're just going to let JJ rest no matter what during this two-game holiday kind of trip. So this is really Carson Wentz's opportunity, which is really what you want to see if you're picking a team. You know that the quarterback, the veteran quarterback, who's probably a little bit better right now, at least a little bit, than the younger quarterback anyway. So I think that works for your advantage in the short term. On top of that, as you said, Pittsburgh is maybe winning with smoke and mirrors. And the Vikings, again, we all thought at the beginning of the season, or at least I did. I mean, based on last season, there's no reason to think the Vikings weren't more talented or better than the Steelers were. And I don't change my mind at all to get Addison back, and that'll be a big deal to the receiving core. He's been out the first 3 games with the suspension, so that's lifted. He'll play, and that'll help. And also keep in mind, Pittsburgh's dealing with some injuries. You know, one of their key pass rushers is still out, Highsmith. A couple of guys in the secondary are questionable. There's the 2 starters. There was a Joey Porter Jr. and Deshaun Elliott. So, and both of them might not play. So keep an eye on those 2 injuries in the Steelers secondary. But yeah, I think Minnesota is in a good situation right now.
Jim, let me ask you this. This is a game that I have a difficult time getting to a side. I can make cases for both sides of a game, and usually when you do that, you're better off just walking away than trying to drill a better side than the opponent has. And, you know, what I see in this football game is, yes, Pittsburgh has struggled in the stats, and are they likely to rebound against Minnesota here? Can Carson Wentz have back-to-back good football games? But the bottom line to me comes down to, as it oftentimes always does in the NFL, the better quarterback usually wins the game. Do you look at Carson Wentz taking on Aaron Rodgers as a benefit for the Minnesota Vikings?
Yes.
Ooh.
I think Aaron Rodgers, first of all, let me back off to another side of this. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been known for years of having a great defense. Tomlin was known for that. The Steelers have been known for that. They don't have a great defense this year. They're not playing that well.
Good point.
They are just not the same. And Aaron Rodgers now he's not terrible. I'm not saying that. He's probably one of the greatest passers that ever played the football game. He's also in his 40s. And he did come off of a bad injury a couple of years ago with the Achilles. I don't think he's the same. He's still dangerous. I'm not saying he can't beat you, but Carson Wentz is on a football team that has one of the best rosters in football. They are as good a roster as anyone. Last year with Sam Darnold, they played fantastic. And Sam Darnold has never been a world beater. Carson Wentz has never been a world beater. But as Greg said, you don't have to be a world beater to win with this team. They have a lot of talent. If you took the two quarterbacks off the team, both quarterbacks are gone. You're not going to play the game with a quarterback. Which has the better offensive players and defensive players, and maybe the most progressive of the coaches? I have to go with Minnesota in every one of those departments. So
well, I agree with you, and that's the reason they're favored in this game. Even if the doubt is there with Wentz against Rodgers, the bottom line, I think what matters is they're the better football team.
I took a money line play on Minnesota in this game.
There you go.
Now, here's another one, and I don't have this answer. This is a player that played in Ireland. I hear that the field conditions are not good, but I have no way of confirming that. Now, that could make a difference. Again, if anybody knows that, please tell us. And send a comment in, because I'd love to know.
Yeah, I'd love to know anybody that's watching the show from Ireland. Give us a shout out, if you would. That's a real important point, as you mentioned, Jim. Andy, what do you see going on in Ireland in this football game?
Well, you both, especially Jim, pointed out all the advantages that the Vikings have. I ask myself, why is the line 2.5? Why is it under a field goal? And why? And the reason I mention that is that I think at one point it may have tipped 3.5 at one point, but for at least some part of the week it was at 3, and yet the money came in on the underdog Steelers on a neutral field. And we know that, again, if you take a look at these units, I don't know if I would rate. I don't know how I would rate these two offenses. I don't think there's much of a difference, but there's certainly a huge difference between the Minnesota defense and the Pittsburgh defense. My first thought on this game was to look under the total, but I don't like going under 40.5. If you can buy it up to, or if it hits 40, 41 or 41.5, that's a good number to play under. And again, we don't know about the conditions, but I think the worse that the conditions are, it could hurt both teams as far as the offense goes, because the timing will be different if the field conditions are not up to the standards that these teams, NFL teams, are used to playing on. So I don't have a strong opinion on this game. I did see one time, I did actually see 3.5, either that or it was a typo, but I did say Pittsburgh plus the points, and a lot of that just has to do because the line, I would make the line like 4.5 or 5 for Minnesota in this game, given the state of the Pittsburgh defense and the fact that Minnesota is getting a little bit healthier with some of their players. But it's not a game I'm going to play. The only play I would consider in the game is under 41 or better or higher.
Let me interject this. The line opened Pittsburgh 1 -19, 40.5 under 20. It now is everywhere 2.5 Minnesota, but the juice is on the going to 3. It's like 2.5. But
it had been at 3 at many places throughout the week, and the money came back the other way.
Yeah. People are always going to take 3 because of that number. So I don't think moving off of that right now at 4 places, and I'll mention them: Circa, Sportsbook, MGM, and South Point all have 41. I have 30 books on my screen.
Yeah.
So I mean, now I could keep going because there's a lot of 41s, but they're major ones. Yeah. And right now, DraftKings is 40.5, over -12, and FanDuel 40.5, over -15. So it's all leaning towards 41.
Yeah, I was looking at the numbers that Greg has up on the screen as a typical number, but you're absolutely right. You can find 40.5s if you like the over. You can find 41s if you like the under.
Correct.
And it'll probably be, I don't think it's going to matter that much. Not like the Nebraska-Cincinnati college game that was supposed to be a neutral field, and there were 90% Husker fans. I don't think it's going to be like that. But the Steelers will have the home field advantage because they travel as good as any team in the NFL. And also the Rooney family owns the Steelers.
Or it's the Aaron Rodgers
I'm gonna add
identity.
one more thing that Kenny White, and you all know who Kenny White is, pretty sharp guy. On the show yesterday, he said Pittsburgh traveled the day before. Minnesota has been there 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Well,
and that definitely favors Minnesota.
Plus, they're playing, I think, in London next week. So I would not be surprised if there are a lot of Minnesota fans who said, let's take our European vacation. We can stay for 2 weeks and see 2 football games.
And next week, they will have no jet lag.
Yeah, exactly.
And the team they're playing.
I think they're like Cleveland. I think it's Cleveland, isn't it?
It might. I don't know. I don't have the schedule.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look here.
But that's an interesting point. Kenny brought that up.
Yeah,
he says it really
Cleveland.
favors the team that gets there sooner because they get over the jet lag.
Yeah.
And Kenny's a really smart handicapper. We all know who he is.
Yeah, he's a very good numbers guy for sure.
Yes.
We use his power ratings in our playbook news.
Well, he by the way, one of the things he does is he rates every player, starters and backups, has an individual rating for every player, and uses that and putting together his analysis of games, especially when you get an idea of how many snaps these guys play.
Yeah, when you analyze injuries, right? Exactly.
Okay, here's one we got from David. Excuse me with pronunciation. Koszegi. A 1/4 inch of rain expected in Dublin on Saturday.
Okay.
When is the 1/4 inch though? Is it after the game is over?
No,
no, it'd be before the game.
That's
so
Saturday.
It could damage the field.
The day before.
Yeah, it could damage the field, make it a lot more slippery.
Right.
So yeah, I mean,
And from somebody that I know that saw a game there a couple of weeks ago said that the field was awful.
That was a college game between Iowa State and Kansas State.
There you go.
Yeah.
How high scoring was that game? I don't remember it.
Not high scoring. It was like around 23-20, something like that.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, guys, let's get over to our next game on tap here. We talked about the Philadelphia Eagles earlier. They're going to take on Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, the quarterback the Cleveland Browns have nightmares and cry about every night, having let him go and watch his success as the way it's evolving here today. I'm going to start it off here with you, Greg. The Philadelphia Eagles. The question here is about Lane Johnson. When he got hurt early in the football game last week, they had to make a change to their offensive line, and they brought in an offensive lineman who was just ragged and had a couple of times he had started was just destroyed. But he played well. He held up well in that football game last week, surprisingly against the Rams. Where do you see the Eagles going this week against Tampa? Greg, is there a letdown here for the Philadelphia Eagles, or are they out to prove they're still the defending Super Bowl champions?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody outside of Philly feels sorry for the Eagles or Lane Johnson that he suffered his injury during the tush push. Such is life.
One of his own people fell on his ankle.
It's being shown as a stinger on the injury report.
It is.
Yeah. So, and look, here's the thing about the Eagles too, and the offensive line, and we know it's good, but let's just keep this in mind because this is important. Because we said it for years with the Cowboys when the Cowboys were such a great offensive line, and sooner or later, like 2 or 3 years after their line started to not be so great, we still said they were great. The Eagles' offensive line is not as good as they were a couple of years ago. They're just not, because their all-pro, maybe Hall of Fame center's gone. And the guy who replaced him, Jurgens, I'm sorry, he's not very good. The only reason why people may be thinking that he's okay is just because he's on the Eagles' offensive line. So the Eagles have 2 awesome tackles, and they got a pretty good guard, but they have a couple of spots in their offensive line that are below average. And if they were so good and they were so dominant, then how come Saquon Barkley can't run the ball so far this season? And how come they can't throw the ball? So, just trying to preface that, just trying to put it out there to keep that in mind is that they still have an above average line, but it's not super dominant like it used to be. So they're vulnerable. And if Lane Johnson winds up missing time, then that is even making that line a little bit more vulnerable. But again, at least they've got that other guy, Beast, on the other side of the line, who I believe was a 7th round draft pick. It shows you how what kind of a general manager Howie Roseman is. But as far as this game is concerned, I'm actually going to take Tampa Bay as long as Wirfs plays, because they're getting about 3.5. I see here, And also the Bucks. Let's keep in mind they have done a really good job against the Eagles over the years. Since 2015, they have beaten the Eagles 6 out of 7 times. So they kind of have their number in a way, as any team outside the division can have a number on a team. So I think that, and again, especially even going to Tampa, there's been some situations where the Eagles have gone to Tampa recently and have not played well, including last year. They lost by 2 touchdowns last year as a 1-point favorite, and it was week 4, same week, and they lost to them by 2 touchdowns. So and for me, it's all about Wirfs. If Wirfs plays, I'll take the Bucks. If he doesn't, I'll take the Eagles.
Andy, I think I know which direction you're going, and got your newsletter and was able to read quite a bit of it. Once again, terrific job. The Logical Approach football newsletter, guys. You have to put that on your must-read list every week. Just go to thelogicalapproach.com and check out all the information. You want to put that on your must-do list here this weekend. I think I know where you're going in this football game, Andy. Correct me if I'm wrong. Which side do you like in this contest?
I like the Philadelphia Eagles in this contest for a number of reasons. And I know Tampa Bay's had the success against the Eagles recently. Obviously the playoff game 2 years ago, but the Eagles had quit at that point. That was the time when they started 10-1 and were summarily eliminated rather easily by the Bucks. And then the early season last year. And you talk about Saquon Barkley. He's averaging 3.3 yards per carry this year. Not only that, his longest run this season, 16 yards. Teams are focusing in on him as far as being able to force the Eagles to do more passing. And they've been a little bit reluctant to do it. I think they've been trying to wear teams down. We haven't seen them really explode for points this year. And then last week when they finally had to come from behind, they started to use the passing game, and Hurts put up some pretty decent numbers. I think his best numbers of the season overall as far as the passing game goes. But I take a look also at Tampa Bay. I love Baker Mayfield. He's been an inspiration to the entire team, and the team feeds off that. But I look at Tampa Bay and what they've done so far this season. Opening week, they have that 3-point win over Atlanta, a team that is 1-2. The following week, they give up. They come from behind to win at Houston, team that's 0-3. And last week, Tampa Bay had that game against the Jets. I'm not going to say they were fortunate to win, because they were only fortunate because of the field goal that allowed the Jets the blocked field goal that the Jets to take the lead, but still part of the game. And the Jets are 0-3. So Tampa Bay's games have been against teams that are a collective 1-8 against the league, or basically, 1-5 against other than Tampa, because the 3 losses to Tampa make them 1-8. Yes. Yeah. When I look at the Eagles, of course, they had that game against Dallas where they were pretty much in control. Of course, that's the game that Carter missed beginning with the first play from scrimmage, and that had some effect on Dallas's success that week. And, of course, when the Lightning came, the game was basically over because neither team scored nor did much of anything after that. I think that occurred in the third quarter. Then you had the Eagles go down and play Kansas City, a rematch in names of the Super Bowl. It's not really a revenge game. You're not going to you can't avenge a Super Bowl loss unless you get to play them again and win the next Super Bowl. But it was a meaningful game for both teams, and the Eagles managed to grind that one out and win. And then, of course, last week, the Eagles showed that resiliency. I still think they're a better football team than Tampa Bay. I think they've been tested by better opposition than Tampa Bay has faced. And I think because of the success, due to the situation and circumstances where they had to come from behind and use the passing game, I think we're going to see more of the passing game, which is what Philadelphia should be doing, because if they don't pass the football, you're going to continue to just focus on Saquon Barkley. If you start having success in the passing game, it'll make it a little bit easier for the offensive line to get things going and for Barkley to do his thing. Once he gets out into the open, gets 5-6 yards past the line of scrimmage, and then maybe he goes for another 20-25 yards, which he hasn't done this year. And I think of that, a lot of that has to do, and I don't know what the reasoning was, but the lack of Philadelphia working in much of a passing game in their game plan. I think that changes after what we saw last week. And I still like Tampa Bay as a team. I'm still going to be on them more times than against them this year, but that's just not one of those weeks.
Jim, what do you think? Is there a letdown in order for Philadelphia? I know undefeated teams don't generally think about letting down, but are they ecstatic on a cloud that's a little higher than usual?
Or is it a wake up? Or is it a wake up call, which is the opposite of a letdown?
Well, this is a very difficult game for me to analyze. First of all, I have Tampa Bay to win their division. I have Tampa Bay to win their conference championship game. I have Tampa Bay to play in the Super Bowl. I have Baker Mayfield as the most valuable player. These are all bets that I made months ago, and that was on our ProLine TV recordings.
Right.
So I'm not going to let that affect me in this game. I don't like the Tampa Bay offensive line being injured. Even if Worst comes back, I don't know if he's going to be 100%. Loss of Evans is a big deal because that's a big quarterback Baker likes to go to. Baker has been a miracle worker. I'm not going to bet this game. I'll watch it, and I might make live bets in it, but I won't bet pre-flop. I just don't have a good feel. You have a 3-0 team playing at home, taking 3.5 points. That says to me that there's an awful lot of people out there that feel they've taken this game from 2.5 up to 3.5. And these are not amateur bettors that are making these bets, because this time of week, and this was done early in the week, these are pro bettors that are doing this. So I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to stay away from it. There's a lot of games to bet. That's not one of them.
Jim, any possibility that the move from 2.5 to 3.5 is a setup for coming back on the dog if it goes higher?
You mean a Billy Walters move?
Well, yeah, which by the way, I want people to realize what that is. Totally legal, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. So anyone who questions sort of anything going on, no, not at all. If you want to follow what he does and to create an opportunity for him to come the other way, that's fine. So I just want to stop.
That's a head fake move that was more prominent in the old days. It doesn't happen very often now. I don't think anybody could feel all that confident betting on Tampa Bay with 3 offensive linemen out and one coming back marginally healthy or not,
and another going out with Evans after last week.
Yeah, I'm not going to play it. There's plenty of other action I can put my money on and have already.
The injuries being a key part of the game, as you mentioned, Jim. And my feeling is, if they weren't there and Tampa were still the dog, if they were taking maybe 2 or 1.5 because of the healthier offensive linemen, I'd certainly be looking hard at the Tampa Bay Bucks. I love fading these teams that are winless in the stats their previous 3 games and then laying points. I call that leaking oil, and that's what Philadelphia is. They're leaking oil right now at this particular time. But again, I'm going to allude back to what I commented on to begin the show. They're playing a lot like the Kansas City Chiefs have done in the past, where they would continually get out-yarded in football games, yet find a way to win close call games. And that appears to be a bit of what looks to be Philadelphia's MO this football season. Guys, another big game on tap. We talked about the Indianapolis Colts and their surprising start this football season. They're going to go out to Los Angeles to take on the Rams this week. Greg, do the Colts get exposed this week, or do they continue their winning ways?
I don't know about exposed. I think the line is what would concern me the most. I think the Rams will win the game, but I think the Colts right now, even though you could look at them and say, all right, they beat 2 teams that are combined 0-6, and they probably shouldn't have beat Denver. Really, they shouldn't have. They just got lucky because the penalty that was awarded against Denver had nothing to do with the play, really. So, but the confidence that the Colts have right now, that's what's important. That's what's going in their minds into this game, is that, hey, doesn't matter, we can beat anybody. You know, this is we're hot. You know, we're feeling good, and that's what you want. Confidence is important in sports. So I think that confidence will keep the Colts in this game and make it a 4-quarter game. So let's keep in mind that for both the Ram game and the San Francisco game, if you're betting those games, those 2 teams are playing on Thursday night. So it's a very important division matchup coming up for both the Rams and San Francisco on Thursday, short week ahead. So that's something that could be in the back of their minds. So I'm not so sure the Rams necessarily, lose the one of the Eagles and then put all of their effort into the Colts with the Niners coming up in 4 days. So I wouldn't judge the game based on that. But I think the Rams are still a better team and they'll pull it out.
Jim, let me ask you this question. Daniel Jones might be, after 3 games in the NFL, voted today the MVP of the league after a 3-game start. Yes. He's really, really given this football team something they haven't had in a long time, and that's confidence at the quarterback position. Is he a factor in this football game, and will he be able to expose a potential Rams letdown?
He is definitely a factor. It definitely shows you what can happen when we change coaches. Down Indiana Jones, as they're calling him now, they played a soft schedule. We know that, but they've dominated. I mean, they have been unbelievably strong. The Rams are a solid team, but they have an old quarterback, 37 years old, that has been hurt, and he is subject to being hurt. Jones is very healthy. The game opened 4.5 Rams, immediately shot down to 3.5. 4.5 was way too much. I didn't get it, but if they would have put it up there today, I'd take it. At this point, I have one opinion. I do think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think both teams are going to put up points. I don't think the Colts are used to the quality of quarterback that they're facing today in this game that is going to be able to expose their defense. And I'm not saying their defense is terrible. It's not. But there are no defenses that can really shut you down, or there are very few defenses that can shut you down in today's modern age with all the rules favoring the offenses. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Went from 46.5 up to 49.5. I can't even see a solid 49 anymore. So I'm going to go with that move. I like it over. Your conditions are going to be decent in the game. And both quarterbacks are going to try to light it up. The one thing you can say about the Colts, if you really analyze them, their coach, he makes some strange decisions at times, but he is solid. He has developed Danny Dimes, Indiana Jones, into a pretty damn good quarterback, which wasn't the case when he was in New York. And you got two good coaches. You got two offensive coaches. You got two guys that like to put the ball in the air down the field. And the Indianapolis Colts, they have a pretty good offensive line. They can run the football. They got a great running back in Taylor. I mean, this is a very, very solid football team. The only knock on them is that they played a soft schedule, but they've beaten the shit out of that soft schedule. So I like a lot of points.
Well, one thing I want to point out here, because it does make it, you talked about the schedule. Well, they played what? Tennessee and who was it? Houston, I think, and they, two bad teams.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Denver
you're
was
big on strength of schedule, and that's where you're going
yeah.
to with this.
Well, yes, sort of, but not exactly. Denver's considered to have one of the better defenses in the league. Okay, Rams defense is pretty strong as well. The Indianapolis Colts ran for 167 and passed for 306 against that Denver defense at home in week 2. Right. That's something that raised the alarm on how good is this Denver defense, because we know how good it's been the last couple of years. Maybe it's not that good. And I'm wondering if that, or maybe if Denver's defense is really that good and the Colts were able to do that, what can they do offensively on the road, also on artificial turf at SoFi against the Rams, who are considered to have a defense maybe not quite up to what Denver's perceived to have, but still a pretty good defense.
Well, and Jim brings up a real good point here. The transformation from Danny Dimes to Indiana Jones has meant so much to this Indianapolis Colts football team. And I was all prepared to go in strong with Indianapolis this week. I'm listening to you guys here. I'm a little bit concerned about who it is that Indianapolis has beat so far this football season. But I also know in my database that teams, after they tackle the defending Super Bowl champions, are almost always prone to a letdown if they were an underdog and they won the game. For the Rams, unfortunately, they didn't win the game. They should have won the game, but they didn't win the game. I think this is a real tough call. I'm going to take the points in this contest here. I still feel the Rams will have a difficult time getting it back.
By the way, the Rams also played both Houston and Tennessee before Philadelphia.
A pair of softies, yes.
14-9 against Houston and a little bit of a bigger margin against Tennessee.
Clarify one thing. I would not be on Rams laying points. I agree with you, Mark. I would favor the dog, but I'd like to get that original 4.5, which is not there anymore. But if I could get a 4, I would add that to my portfolio on the Colts. But I do like the over a lot.
There we
go. What did you say, Andy? When you said Tennessee and
Tennessee and Houston. They beat Houston 14-9 to open the season and 33-19 at Tennessee. By the way, I think
you're talking about the Colts.
I'm talking about the Rams.
Oh, okay, the Rams. Yeah. That's interesting because they.
There are a lot of scheduling abnormalities this year. I think some of these teams play their 4 non-conference rivals in succession, or at least 3 of them.
And you have the Chargers who played all
division rivals
1, 2, 3 already.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible schedule.
I don't think they play a division game till around Thanksgiving. I think now the Chargers. I think it's going to be that long for them.
Wow,
I think so.
For the way they opened up. Let's get to the big game, guys, on tap here. It has to be the Ravens and the Chiefs. It seems like these two teams meet annually in the playoffs, and annually there's always a rematch the next year, and there's some sort of revenge in here. They didn't do that last year, but they did 2 years ago. Greg, what do you think happens? The Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 football teams that have been disappointing so far to start the season. Who comes out the winner here?
Well, I think it's to me, I think it's just obvious who's playing better. But even though most of that is offensively, so I think we have a nice little example here where you have on one side you have Baltimore's offense, which can't play really any better, and Kansas City's defense really can't play any better. But you flip it, and the Chiefs still offensively hasn't shown anything, and Baltimore's defense continues to struggle. And so, if this keeps going on, they've got to make a move. Okay, because they should never have hired this defensive coordinator last year. And once again, they've gotten off to a bad start, and they just have to make a move at some point if they keep losing games based on their defense. But Baltimore's offense is so good. And I still think that if you look at it, even though they're 1-2, if they don't have these 2 fumbles at the end of games, they're probably 3-0, which again is pretty unlikely for Henry. So I still think Baltimore's playing better than the Chiefs are. I think the Ravens, we kind of felt that the Chiefs were going to come back to earth a little bit this year for the first time in a long time because of the Super Bowl loss and the way they played last year. And we're seeing that right now before our eyes. The Chiefs are playing kind of the way we thought that they would. And so I'm not just going to all of a sudden think that the same old Chiefs are going to pop up on Sunday because Xavier Worthy's back. So, I think Baltimore's the play.
Jim, where are you going to go here in this football game? This is the game that will have a lot of eyes on it, with or without Taylor Swift.
Well, first of all, right off the top, I think Kansas City's a great teaser play. That's number 1. Number 2, I'd like to bring this point up. Offensive line play. I was shocked at how bad the offensive line for Baltimore looked the other night.
I agree.
They were pathetic. And Lamar never had any time. And he is an amazing athlete. But that Baltimore offensive line was crap against Detroit. Now, Detroit has a pretty good defensive line. So let's look now at the Kansas City defensive line. Are they going to do anything that's reasonably similar to what Detroit was able to do in that game? That's a big question mark to me. I saw a hole in Baltimore that I did not like, and that is the offensive line. I'm a big guy on offensive lines. That comes into play every time I talk about a football game. I did not like that offensive line for Baltimore. Makes me very shaky on them. No matter how good Lamar is, and he is incredible, you cannot play offense if you can't keep your quarterback standing up.
I agree. That's what's going to come down to. Offensive line leads to so many things, Jim, as you mentioned. It allows you to be able to control the running game, allows you to open up the passing game. And right now, the Baltimore offensive line is suspicious, I think, at best, going into the football game. And I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is aware of that. I'm going to go to the Kansas City Chiefs in this game here, not because Patrick Mahomes is 16-3 as a home underdog or as a dog, I should say. More of an Andy Reid type thing for me. Interesting stat. I ran through the database. I looked at the coaches here, and Andy Reid has done really, really well in his career when he doesn't have a winning record and he's taking on an opponent that also doesn't have a winning record. He's been involved in these football games. You take a look at him 50 times. He's won 35 of them straight up, and he's beat the spread 34 times. So Andy Reid taking care of opponents that can be beat. Andy Reid gets the job done. I think this is a much, much bigger game for Kansas City. Baltimore's flailing right now, and they're flailing for all the right reasons. I think Kansas City's slowly going to get themselves back to where they need to be. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs in the football game. Jim, I'm going to let you go. I know you've got things on tap here, and I really, really appreciate your time.
Did you want me and Greg to talk about that game?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, you guys. I was more concerned about Jim in his
there's a comment from NC says that Jim Feist getting ready to drive a NASCAR after the show. I don't know what that means, but the answer would be no.
Maybe they think it's because they've seen you behind the wheel and they think you drive like a NASCAR driver, Jim.
Oh, no.
I think it's previously scheduled unchangeable commitments.
I gotcha.
Right.
Well, with that, Greg, I'm going to ask you about this football game.
Oh, I talked about it. Andy's the one who hasn't talked
about
it yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's right. You talked about it. If I rank the 4 key units in this game, I put the Baltimore offense number 1, the Kansas City defense number 2, the Kansas City offense number 3, and the Baltimore defense number 4. So you've got strength versus strength and weakness versus weakness. Well, when it's offensive strength against defensive strength, I usually back the defensive strength, which would be Kansas City. And when the weakness is offense versus defense, I usually pick the offense, which would be the Kansas City offense going against the Baltimore defense, which is the second weakest thing there. By the way, these teams are a collective 0-4 against the 2 best teams on their schedule, with Baltimore losing to Buffalo and Detroit, and the Chiefs losing to Philadelphia and the Chargers. I could argue that, the Buffalo-Baltimore game was fairly competitive throughout. The Philadelphia-Kansas City game was pretty competitive throughout. The Detroit-Baltimore game was non-competitive. Well, it was competitive, but Detroit was clearly the better team. And the Chargers game against the Chiefs to open the season was reasonably competitive. One thing I will mention, you talk about in the stats, in that Kansas City-Philadelphia game, Kansas City outgained, and of course they won that game by 20-17, 294-216. So they did have success against the Philadelphia defense that is still decent, even though it's not at the level of last year. I like the Chiefs in this spot. I have them winning this game straight up. We don't know how healthy Worthy will be. I like the kid Thornton, who came in and caught a number of passes last week and looked well. But I think the key to me is, as has been mentioned by the 3 of you, is the Baltimore offense, the offensive line issues. And is there a better defensive coordinator in the league right now, considering his experience, than Steve Spagnuolo? Despite the Super Bowl, although they did make adjustments in this regular season matchup, some different personnel, but still, this was not the Super Bowl that everyone was thinking about. So apparently, Spagnuolo did spot some things to correct.
Another primetime game with another Kansas City Chief being featured in the football game. With that, now I'm going to put the wraps on this edition or segment of the NFL portion of our show. Jim, I'm going to wish you nothing but the very best of luck this week, and I'm going to look forward to visiting with you again next week here on Mark Lawrence Against the Spread.
Thank you very much, and good luck to all of you and all the fans out there. And I'm not driving NASCAR this week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jim. Put that helmet on, okay?
Vroom, vroom.
Okay, guys, with that, let's move over to the college football portion of the card this week. And all in all, I think if you take a look at it, you've got some intriguing games here, the bulk of which I see happening in the Big Ten Conference this week. And because they're as big and strong as they are, you usually find that coming out of the Big Ten or the SEC each and every week. But we're going to do 3 featured games and a spotlight game. And just lo and behold, every one of them involves a Big Ten team this week. Let's start it off here, Greg, with the Indiana Hoosiers, the hot Indiana Hoosiers taking on Iowa, coming off that surprising rout against Illinois. Were you surprised at what Indiana did to Illinois last week, and can they keep up the work this week?
Well, everybody was surprised, including Indiana, even though they won't admit it. Nobody expected that type of outcome, but there weren't any major injuries. There wasn't anything that completely stood out. So I just have to chalk it up, if you're an Illinois fan, as we just had a bad day. For Indiana fans, this is a really great sign, because they are now more equipped to be a better, more competitive playoff team. And that's because of the quarterback. Everybody loved Rourke, but Rourke came from the MAC. And so he was never going to be able to step up in big games against big competition. And that's why whenever they played good teams last year, they were limited. But Mendoza, he's got pro potential, and they've got nice weapons at receiver. They can run the ball a little bit. They've got good players on defense at every spot. They're well coached, and everything came through for them as perfect a game as they could have played. And that's why I'd be a little bit concerned this week about how much better could they play, but they don't have to win by 60. All they got to win by 8. And I think they could do that against Iowa, because Iowa is not going to be able to move the football as easily as they did against Rutgers, because Indiana's got a better defense, and Indiana has just as good, if not better, offense than Rutgers. So I know 7 sticks out because Iowa's the home dog, and how dare you give unless you're Ohio State, Oregon, or Penn State, how dare you give 7.5 at Iowa? But Iowa just has no offense, and Indiana's defense should be able to limit them. And there's no way Iowa's defense is going to put a clamping on that offense to cover this game, in my mind. And keep in mind, too, that Iowa has only been a home dog. Well, actually, they haven't been a home dog since 2022. And in that matchup, they did lose to Michigan. They lost the game. They lost the cover. So I wouldn't really worry too much about Iowa being a home dog, or I wouldn't put too much into it. And Indiana has covered 7 straight as a favorite of 14 or less, including 1-0 in that spot this year. So I'm taking Indiana and giving the 7.
Greg's going to lay the points and look for the momentum to continue with the red-hot Indiana Hoosiers. Andy, where are you going in this battle of the eyes this week?
Well, I'm also going to be on Indiana this week. You look at Iowa's schedule. They played 2 Patsies, Massachusetts and Albany, and then 2 competitive teams, Rutgers and Iowa State. They lost to Iowa State, putting up 13 points in a 16-13 loss. They did beat Rutgers 38-25. That was one of their better offensive showings. I think for the year, they're averaging about 33 points. Well, that's because they put 34 up against Albany and 47 up against UMass. So, one of the things I do, and unfortunately I don't have the numbers in front of me, is I separate my statistics between full season, including games against everybody, and games against FBS teams only, such as Rutgers and an Iowa State. And you can see the discrepancy, especially because it's a rare situation. I mean, UMass technically it's an FBS team, but it's really more on the level of an FCS team because they haven't been able to really get up their recruiting. It's tough to recruit to UMass, but nonetheless, and I'll use a perfect example: the LSU Ole Miss game. If you take a look at the stats for LSU, they've played 4 games, 3 of them against FBS teams, and 1 of them against an FCS team, Southeast Louisiana. They outgained Southeast Louisiana by 324 yards in that game last week. Okay, but if you take the 4 games that they've played overall, they are outgaining their opposition by an average of 145 yards per game. You take out the Southeast Louisiana game, that 145 yards differential turns into an 85-yard differential. That's the impact, especially early in the season, of these 2 huge routes between when you play FCS teams. And of course, I just mentioned that. Let's say Iowa's played 1.5 of those teams. Indiana, normally I wouldn't look to lay these points, but as Greg said, Iowa is offensively challenged, and they've been that way for a number of years. That's Kirk Ferentz's footprint. What's he, 21, 22 years? There's a great success, or a 9-10 win virtually team every season. So if I were to play the game, I would play Indiana simply because can they get? Well, look, what did Rutgers score? Even though they were playing from behind a good part, 28 points. If they can give up 28 points, maybe Rutgers, Indiana can get, let's say, 35 on a conservative. That could still be enough to win this game by double digits.
Well, I'm going to look at this from a different standpoint here, guys. First of all, for Indiana, they've had it all their way largely because they've had an awful lot of home cooking this year. Every game that they've won this year has been at home in Bloomington. This is their first road game of the season into a tough venue at Kinnick Stadium here, where Kirk Ferentz, as a home dog at Kinnick Stadium, 31 times. He's gone 20-11 against the spread in these particular games. There has to be, in my mind, unless they're superhuman beings, some sort of a letdown after pummeling an undefeated ranked Illinois football team last week in the manner in which Indiana did. I think they're going to find the footing to be a little bit different here on this field away from home on Saturday. And I'm even going to go so far, guys, as to call for the upset.
Wow.
By the way, let me ask you, would you consider Cignetti, what he's shown so far, to be the Dan Campbell of college football?
Absolutely. I mean, is he going to keep his foot on everybody's throat until they're dead? It appears to be that way, but he's got to be able to find the throat this week away from home, and I don't know whether he's going to be capable of doing that against the.
By the way, for whatever it's worth,
yes.
They came off last year. Indiana did, second game under Cignetti. Western Illinois, one of those weak teams, 77-3. They beat them. Following week, they go out to UCLA, laying 3.5, beat UCLA 42-13, 52-14 the following week against Charlotte. Another huge win. So they have shown, even in his short tenure, an ability to follow up routes. Now, maybe it's a little different, of course, because it's against Illinois, division rival and regional rival. But he has shown the ability to get the maximum out of this team every week.
Yeah, he has. In fact, he's becoming, one of these coaches that just wants to flatten everybody he plays, and he's not shy about running scores up. But you still have to be able to get past a team at Iowa at their home field, protecting the home turf, I think, in the right situation. But speaking about Illinois, guys, let's take a look at them this week. They're going to host Southern Cal. Greg, I'm going to ask you this. Is this a red-faced, embarrassed Illini team hosting Southern Cal, or is this an Illinois football team that was exposed last week?
Again, I just have to cough it up for just a bad week because there was nothing that led to this. Most people understood the history of Brett Bielema in Illinois and those roles as a dog, and it just one of those days, I think. So look, they'll be fine. These are college kids. They are resilient. They can come back from an embarrassing loss one week as long as they have good locker room, good coaching, good players, they'll be fine. And I trust that Illinois will be fine, especially since it's homecoming. So they're not going to just, put their head between their legs and hope that they can't play the next week. They'll be fine. If anything, because it's homecoming, they're going to try to get this bad taste out of their mouths right away. And it's a good spot because USC, as you are aware of, Mark, of course, under Lincoln Riley, this is not a good spot for them, being a road favorite.
Nope.
They are just 3-12 against the spread as a road favorite, including they could not cover at Purdue as a big road favorite. So I see no reason why I would think just because Illinois had one bad week that all of a sudden this is going to be a terrible season for Illinois. Now, look, if they hadn't played anybody, if they played cupcakes, I'd be like, yeah, maybe this is not as good as the team I thought they were. But they went into Duke and they beat Duke and they beat them handily. And Duke's a decent team. So I just chop it up for a bad week. And I think they'll be okay this week. I don't know about the money line. I think it's a decent money line play, but I just be safe and just take the 7.
I was just going to say, I'm like Mark was with the Indiana-Iowa game. I see Illinois winning this game.
I agree with you, Andy. That's the side I'm going to look at. Tell me what you think about Illinois winning the game, Andy.
Bielema gets a lot of flack sometimes, but I still think what he's been able to get out of this Illinois team last year and this year's so far is pretty good, notwithstanding last week's effort. I rate him. I'm not overly enthusiastic about Lincoln Riley and what he's done at USC so far with the recruiting that he's been able to achieve, and maybe part of it is the move to the Big Ten. I just like the way that Bielema has brought this Illinois team around. He had success, obviously, at Wisconsin for many, many years. Not quite the same degree of success at Arkansas, but not a total failure as well. So I like the coaching matchup here, and I do think that again, these are kids. They're not nearly as bad as the score last week would indicate, because as I just pointed out, Indiana did that to a lot of teams last year. Not quite to that magnitude, perhaps, at least not at the FBS level. And again, as Greg pointed out, Lincoln Riley and USC, not a great record as a road favorite. This is a spot where they could stub their toes. By the way, I think in that Indiana game that we were talking about, the good news and bad news. The bad news is their next game is against Oregon. The good news is it's in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's good. Yep. But it's still Oregon, and they're still awfully.
Yeah.
Their chest is awfully puffed up after last week here. I'm going to go with Illinois in the game, and I agree with Andy. I think they can take Southern Cal down straight up on the football field here. And brings out a great point here about Lincoln Riley, how he's really struggled, Greg mentioned, as a road favorite. He's really struggled in this particular role. He loves the home cooking. He doesn't like it on the road where he is this week. And he's going up against a red-headed football team, a red-faced football team, I should say.
Yeah.
I like Illinois. Remember, they came back here this year, guys, with 19 returning starters. They were number 2 overall in returning production this year, and they got out to that great start. I thought everything looked good for them going into that Indiana football game. Everything did, except they forgot to show up for the football contest. I think they erase that this week, and I think they make a statement. Illinois bounces back, in my eyes, and takes Southern Cal down in this football contest. Let's take a look now, guys, at another Big Ten football game we've got on tap this week. And as I mentioned, a lot of Big Ten action going on. Washington Huskies going to evade the Horseshoe in Columbus to take on the Buckeyes. Greg, is there an upset potential in this game or not?
This one's in Washington, and because it's in Washington, I give them a chance. But initially, when I saw the score, the line, the first thing, I was a little bit surprised. I was like, wow, it's only 8.5? Even though Washington is a dangerous potential sleeper in the Big Ten this year, because Jedd Fisch, first year last year, he played the veteran quarterback, and then he played the young quarterback, and now the young quarterback has got some experience. The kid, Damon Williams, he's a good dual threat. Jonah Coleman is the best running back in the nation that most people haven't heard of before, and I think they're going to get a good idea of what he is in this game on Saturday. So Washington's got an explosive offense, and I think they've got the type of offense that can compete against Ohio State and make this an interesting game. Throw in the fact that Jedd Fisch, in his last 2 years, if you date back to last year with Washington and 2023 with Arizona, he's 3-1 straight up and 4-0 against the spread as a home dog. So I think that bodes well. And this is one of those games too, that if you wanted to take the money line, just like the other 2 games we talked about, I don't think it would be the craziest upset. I think it's possible. It could happen. We saw with Tennessee and Georgia, we saw that game. And I think this is similar to my mind. I think Washington's sort of like Tennessee was. They're at home. They're trying to make, a statement. They've got good players. And we don't know how good Ohio State is, really, just like we didn't know how good Georgia was because of all the talent Ohio State's lost. And this quarterback, this Sayin kid, he's thrown like 3 interceptions in his last 2 games, not against good teams. So, and remember, he didn't have like a great game against Texas. So we still don't know how good Ohio State is, which is why I'll probably, if I'm going to take this game, I'm probably going to go ahead and take Washington in the points, to tell you the truth. But I think if Ohio State wins this game handily, then they have to really be considered one of the teams to beat in this country. So I think this is going to be a big statement game for them.
Yeah, we've got that race going on right now where teams just don't want to win games. They want to destroy opponents, it appears here. Any concern at all in this football game, taking a look at it, Andy, from this being Ohio State's first road game of the season? They've been camped at the Horseshoe all season long, going into a tough venue here. What's your overall take? Is there an upset possibility?
It is. I don't think so, but again, I wouldn't be shocked because Washington is a good team. But a couple of factors here. Ohio State had a bye last week, so they've had time to prepare for this first road game, road trip, etc. They are also catching Washington off of a revenge win last week against Washington State, which also followed a bye week for Washington, if I recall correctly, and a game in which they had to work a little bit harder than they thought. I think this was, a 29-24 game or something in the late third quarter, I believe. So Washington State was hanging in there as a huge underdog, and then Washington just,
pulled away, right.
put the foot on the gas and took away. So I still think the talent level on Ohio State is national championship caliber. This is their first road game. That is a concern. But again, I think they had that extra week to prepare. So they got a good chance to see Washington and what they did well, especially when the game got competitive. Not sure I'm going to play the game, but the side that I would prefer would be Ohio State, based largely on the overall pedigree. And yeah, they didn't play the greatest game against Texas, but it was the first game. They had to replace a lot of starters from last year's team, did Ohio State. But Ohio State, aside from what they do get through the portal. They're one of those programs, and Washington's not quite there yet, but Washington's been a solid program for many years, a couple of down cycles in there. But these kind of programs don't rebuild, they reload. Now, it's a little bit more difficult to reload with the portal these days because guys you would normally reload with to replace your starters sometimes get taken away by other teams. But for the folks who remain at Ohio State, they are replacing guys who were probably at their level when those guys who have now departed were in their, say, freshman or sophomore seasons and didn't yet become starters. So it's an intriguing matchup. I think we'll learn from this game how good both teams are. Will Washington be good? And Washington doesn't have to win the game, but I mean, let's say if Washington covers and it's a well-played game and it's not like a lopsided turnover margin one way or the other, then maybe Washington is indeed a team to keep an eye on in the Big Ten. On the other hand, if Ohio State goes out there and wins 37-14, maybe we lessen the concerns about Ohio State a little bit.
Well, this is a collision course game, two undefeated teams here, and Washington has had a propensity for cashing tickets as home underdogs. 5-1 the last 6 times they've been the home underdog. And I think what gets me here is, aside from it being the first road game for Ohio State, is the fact you look at their numbers and you crunch them out here. Washington has won the games in the stats by more yards per game than has Ohio State. 276 yards a game win here for Washington, 245 for Ohio State. I'm not saying that they're better than Ohio State, and I'm saying a lot of it depends upon the caliber of the opposition, unquestionably. But it also, in my mind, to the players, it's something that they feel positive about. I mean, I think Washington is a home dog in the making here that could spring an upset here in a football game like this. There's so many other good games in the card this week. Some that we didn't even talk about. We didn't even go to the Southeast Conference for the Alabama-Georgia game. We let that one go. But I think there's.
But we will talk about that tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Okay, you and I will talk about that tomorrow. I like that.
Yes.
Okay.
Did we?
I'm sorry,
Mark. Did we talk Penn State, Oregon? Did we talk Penn State,
That's
Oregon?
going to be our featured game coming up next.
Okay.
Our featured game of the week happens to be, as Andy alluded to, Oregon at Penn State this week. Greg, where are you going? Are you going to be in the whiteout stands at Happy Valley, or are you going to be wearing a duck uniform this week?
Well, first of all, let me see. I got to come up with maybe some sound effects for that. Let's see.
Okay. There we go. That sounds like a duck effect.
Or it sounds like, watch out, fire truck coming through.
All right, so here we go. Here is the game of the week. No, here's a hell of a stat. So anybody who's really down on James Franklin and the fact that he can't win the big one, he can't beat the big teams, and that's true.
Well, he can't.
He's 1-15 straight up against top 5 ranked teams. So
that's not encouraging.
No.
At all. In fact, if you bet only on that fact, you made money over the years. Even if you waited until he was 0-5 and you started at that point.
Okay, but Oregon's ranked 6th, so I wouldn't worry about that stat in this game. Even though, of course, it does matter because it does show you that whenever they do play the big teams, Penn State fans have historically, they understand this. They know this. It's a fact. That's why everybody was wondering, what could they do in the playoffs? And then even when they were beating teams in the playoffs last year, even their fans were like, they beat SMU and then they beat
Boise.
They beat Boise, and come on, those aren't really powerful teams. Really, I mean, SMU was just a group of 5 team the year before. But look, this is a team that might be his best team ever. And they have played a bunch of patsies, just like Oregon. Both teams haven't really played anybody yet. But the one thing that I'm going to zero in on here, which is why, to answer your question, Mark, I'm going to take Penn State. It's going to be a monster scene. It's a night game. It's a whiteout game. It's one of the incredible atmospheres of college football, is the fact that this is exactly when you want to bet against Oregon. You don't want to do it a whole lot, but when you do, this is when you want to bet against them, because they are 0-5 straight up, 0-4-1 against the spread, their last 5 as a road dog. And with Dan Lanning as the head coach, they are 1-4 straight up, 1-3-1 against the spread when they are not the favored team. So I'm taking Penn State. Dante Moore is a nice young quarterback. He's never experienced anything like this. A lot of the players at Oregon have to step up to replace some of the star players that have gone from Oregon's last year's team. They've never experienced this before. So I'm taking Penn State, and I say that they're ready to show everybody just how good they are.
Andy, how about you? Is it Duck or Lion for you this week?
Lion for me this week, and I'd be lying if I said otherwise. So I'm going to go with the Nittany Lions. I like the experience return that they return. I like Aller, the quarterback, and Penn State, normally produces a lot of, NFL talent on both sides of the football. Oregon, I think, is a little bit of a surprise, the strong start that they've got off to, considering the talent that they lost. But, we know that their coach is pretty solid, been able to recruit. And Oregon's another team that, if you go back to, was it Rich Brooks, who may have been the first one who brought them into national prominence, and they've basically been at that level for like 90% of the time since then. So Oregon's been up there as an elite program, but they don't normally get a lot of attention because they play late games on the West Coast, so you don't get a lot of the same media coverage. A little bit more different now with cable and the widespread, the 24/7 cycle as far as sports goes. I just like the way that Penn State approaches a lot of these games. I am concerned about Franklin's record in these big games, because this certainly is a big game. And yeah, Oregon is still a team to be. Look what they did last year as far as the season they had. They're first in the Big Ten, by the way, of course, as the other Pac-12 defectors. The other three came in. The whiteout, I think, is going to be an interesting experience, but Oregon's played in front of big crowds before. I just think Penn State is the more talented, maybe even the deeper team. And I think, again, Franklin, and Penn State, I'm sure that, forget the alumni, but I'm sure the players want to get the monkey off Franklin's back. And this is a good opportunity for them to do so. Oregon does have the week off next week. That is a little bit of a concern before they play Indiana in 2 weeks. And Penn State goes out to UCLA next week. And that's not, look, if New Mexico can beat UCLA at UCLA, I think Penn State can feel comfortable that they can do the same thing. Although I'll be interested to see what happens with UCLA this week with the first game since the coaching change. But yeah, I'm on Penn State. I don't think it'll be an easy win, but I could see 7 to 10 points.
Well, I'm going to put a little bit of flavoring here the other way, guys. We don't want to make this a 3-0 unanimous Penn State selection and say that we were all on James Franklin as a favorite to knock off a top 5 team. I can't do that, okay? But that's irregardless.
Well, they're not top 5; they're 6.
Who's that, Oregon?
Is that in both polls or just one poll?
Well, the AP poll. That's what they got.
What about the coaches poll?
Nobody cares about the coaches poll
except the coaches.
Except the coaches.
I give a little bit more credit to the coaches poll, even though it's usually an assistant who raised the team. But the coaches, I think, know how better to evaluate the strength of teams than sports writers.
Well, that stat being irrelevant, okay, what I'm going to saunter into, guys, is our featured column, and I bet you didn't know column in the newsletter this week, and I call it Collision Course. And it's a system that I put together in an early black book, if you will, dating all the way back to 2010 is when I first devised this. And it's really, really done really rather well. And what it amounts to is anytime from game 4 on out, you have a matchup of undefeated football teams, you simply play the underdog. How about 79, 59, and 4 to the spread on the blind? That's a pretty nice little on the blind number. If you take a look at a team coming off of a win of 25 or more points their last game, the dog in this game is now 30. Let me read this: 30-8 against the spread. That all comes to Oregon here again in the football game. I like
that's if the favorite comes off of the big win, or the underdog, the unbeaten underdog comes off that big win.
No, the dog. If the dog comes off the big win.
So they're playing with momentum going in as an undefeated underdog.
That's exactly right. So now that we set the table here for this particular football game, I'm going to conclude with this. I like teams that are in a winning role, and Oregon has won 21 straight regular season games in a row. You throw out their bowl games, you throw out the conference championships, they've won 21 regular season games in a row. And then dressing up here to a coach that I think chokes up like a clam in big football games in James Franklin here. The whiteout aside, and just for what it's worth, Penn State's record at home in whiteout games is just barely a little bit, about 50% straight up. It sounds nice, it looks nice, the fans are cheering and everything, but it's nothing that it's going to.
Well, aren't the whiteout games also the kind of games that would qualify as big games for James Franklin?
Well, James Franklin.
Not all of them, but I'm saying, but you're not going to have a whiteout game if they're playing Rutgers.
Okay, but then again, go back to the fact that that they're not much at home. Their record straight up is not all that much in whiteout games. And
no, that's what I'm saying. That a lot of those whiteout games are a number of those are responsible for Franklin's poor record.
Probably so, because they were marquee primetime games, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And likely against top-ranked
teams.
teams.
Yeah.
But put a gun to my head, give me the points in a football game like this each and every time. And for what it's worth, there are 2 collision course underdogs on the card this week. Mark them down. 1 being the Oregon Ducks, 2 being the Washington Huskies. I think you've got a better chance of cashing both those tickets than you do.
What about LSU and Ole Miss?
I think
Are they both?
There's something in the game that is it game 4 on out?
I'm not sure, but
well, LSU
it's a small underdog.
Yeah,
one and a half. Yeah,
Mississippi's. LSU would be the small underdog. You're right. I think when I looked at this on Sunday night when I was doing it, I was seeing a lot of pick in the football game, and I skipped over the game. I do know this, that I like Ole Miss pretty well in this game, and I played them on the money line.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't want to have to lay points, but nonetheless, the 2
heartbreaking overtime loss at LSU last year.
Yes, it was.
When I believe that when LSU, I think they went to overtime. Ole Miss, I think, got a field goal. LSU got the touchdown. I believe that was the only time they led in the game.
I think it was. I think you're right.
That was with Jackson Dart.
There we go. Soon to be a New York Giant, or playing his first National Football League game this week. I'm going to be curious to see what he does for that program as well. Guys, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to thank you. It's another great show this week here. Jim Feist joins us, as he always does, from Las Vegas. He discussed the pro football card with us. Greg DePalma, Andy Isco, we went over both cards, that and the college football card this week. So until next week, here on Against the Spread, and remind everybody else that on Friday on the take a look on the ProLine TV network, myself, Jim Feist, and Greg DePalma, we're going to tear games apart individually. Check that out here on the network tomorrow. And until next week, once again, this is Mark Lawrence, reminding you to always remember to bet with your head, not over it, and good luck as always.